welcome everybody to our event, My Life, My Business. Wish I was here. And as usual, broadly speaking, it is our desire and wish for you to live a life of meaning and purpose, but most of all, a life of enjoyment. And last week it was quite interesting. Shanaaz took us through a short exercise, but rich with meaning and purpose. And I tried to answer as she was going along. And Shanaaz was talking about body mapping and how you can use body mapping to overcome your fear. And I want to pique your interest, and just to remind you that you can access the playback on this platform, on Clubhouse, or you can actually listen to the edited version in our YouTube channel, which is the Mufasa Coaching Practice. But it's my turn this afternoon, and I will continue with the topic business nuggets from a novice biker. A novice biker being me. We've dealt with chapter 1 and chapter 2. Chapter 2 dealt with my first ride and the learning from that. Chapter 3 is literally about understanding the environment from a biker's perspective. So take this with a pinch of salt, completely my own perception, my own learnings, and what you take from it or what will interest you to pursue further, that will be the goal. In any case, chapter 3. Really want to talk about two things: the learning curve and the experience curve. And starting with the learning curve, the first thing after my first ride, obviously, was, as I spoke earlier on, was just to get from the store to where I purchased the motorbike to get home safely without incident. There were lots of incidents, so listen to the podcast. Anyway, one of the first categories within the learning curve topic this afternoon was I had to learn now how to ride. There's one thing just getting from point A to point B once, but now to become more comfortable and more proficient. So needed to grow my competence level. So, as is wont with anything new, you got to learn the rules. And I was, and the team over the weekend, we actually hosted an assessment event with our intern candidates. And we spoke about culture and we spoke about values. And one of the things that we noticed and we touched on there was that every single family has got their own culture, their own rules. Now, generally speaking, what we do is we speak about, these are certain categories of people that follow certain norms and practices, and probably true as a generalization. Umbrella term, people like to do this, a particular type of community like to do this. But there is still further segmentation required within that particular class of community. You can't just say, well, they are pink people and therefore they're like this, and then think that you understand the rules. No, for each one of us, you walk into a home or you walk into a business, you need to understand the rules that apply in that business. Some of them are spoken, written, but where we fall or where we are challenged is normally when we have to comply with unspoken rules. And this is the same when you go into different countries, is normally the unspoken rules that you don't get that you need to learn. So it was the same thing. I had to learn some of the rules, that you need in order for you to do in a certain environment successfully. So just a few of the practical things. Now, if you don't ride and you don't know what this is, that's okay. I'm sharing just the tidbits. If there are other bikers out there listening, they will know exactly and they will roll their eyes. It was like, how can you share something as mundane as that? But listen, I did say these are business nuggets from a novice biker, right? From a learner, from a beginner. Anyway, Number one, first thing I learned was do not speed when lane splitting. And what is lane splitting? This is basically when you ride with your bike between two cars that are in two lanes, and you are straddling the lane, and it's called lane splitting. And it's no good traveling at 120 kilometers an hour when you're doing this. This is where you slow down enough so that you can be aware and you can react to all kinds of eventualities, because it is high risk and there's a thrill in doing this. Now, obviously, lane splitting is not required when there's free-flowing traffic. Where lane splitting is absolutely gorgeous is when traffic is moving very slowly or not at all. So the best, I would say, is learning that a 30 kilometer an hour movement between the cars is more than good enough. Anything faster than that prevents you from reacting in the kind of times that you have. Sometimes you have mere seconds, and your reaction time is not good enough. Once again, and I spoke about this in the previous two occasions, is that you got to own your lane without fear. You occupy the road and you are there, and you belong there, and therefore you don't have to feel pressurized to move aside for four-wheelers as a two-wheeler. So, and I've said this also, but this was within the context of lane splitting, as driving within the speed limit. Well, why would you want to ride at more than what is required? Now, when you're going on a breakfast run, depending on what kind of motorbike you have, sure, you open up on the road and you want to really feel that wind tugging at you while you're sitting on it. But I would say, generally speaking, from my personal perspective, driving within the speed limit would ensure optimal safety for me. The other rule was to really be courteous when motorists make way for you to pass. They've acknowledged you, they've seen you, and they've allowed you to pass. They've allowed you to have the benefit of riding a bike, right? And so be courteous. Either wave or, as I would call, extend expressive nodding. It's like the over-dramatized nod of your helmeted head to thank the motorists for realizing that you're also on the road and making way for you. Then the other one is acknowledging other bikers with a wave. Hey, fellow commuter, fellow biker, I see you. And normally, if you travel, if you're traveling at a speed limit of 120 kilometers an hour, a big expansive wave just does not work. So you kind of do that stomach wave, because anything higher than that, then the wind will blow your arm back. But what I really wanted to talk about was taking corners, is learning the rules about taking corners. And this is where you apply this to business in general. I learned that seeing that I'm approaching a corner, that when looking at that corner, at the very, very best, I instinctively begin to slow down because I fear hitting the barrier, right? That marks the corner or the bend. And it is quite interesting is that I have on the first few occasions realized that by looking at the bend, I would slow down to a mere standstill. And on one occasion, literally two occasions, came to within touching distance of the barrier because I was looking into the bend. And I then realized through that experience that you got to look beyond the bend, whatever the bend is. Whether it is a gradual bend or whether it's a hairpin bend, you've got to look beyond the bend. You've got to look at where you want to end up after you've taken the bend. Now, it's counterintuitive because we want to look at the thing that presents danger. But when you're riding a bike, when you look beyond the bend, your whole body aligns itself to your line of sight, to where you are looking. And it changes how you are gripping the handlebars. And strangely enough, you steer the bike towards the point that you are fixating on. So if you are fixated on the barrier, guess what? Probability is you're going to ride towards the barrier and you're going to hit the barrier. So look beyond the point, look beyond the bend in the road to where you want to end up, and everything lines up. It actually conspires that helps you ride through the bend. It's gliding through the bend. And you don't slow down, you maintain speed, because your focus is not fear-based. It's outcome-based, it's goal-based, and it's vision-based. Now, if you don't believe me, you can do the research. Ask with all the information at our fingertips these days, at the touch of a button. Now that we have Chat GPT and things like that, Google is not just good enough. If you just do some research with novice parachute jumpers, is they are also told that when they jump out of the plane, not to fixate and focus on the thing they are trying to avoid. So, for example, jumping over a field, don't look at the only tree that's there and telling yourself to avoid it, because the probability is you will hit the tree. Focus on the wide expanse of the rest of the open area that you're trying to land in. So, if you're trying to avoid anything, the probability is that you will hit that thing. You will arrive at the thing you are trying to avoid. So if you're trying to avoid obstacles and barriers, you will be stopped by obstacles and barriers if that is going to be your primary focus. So rather focus on where it is you want to be, as a general approach to life or business or projects. If it is a question around healthy eating, and why do you want to eat healthier, or why do you want to exercise, because you got a certain goal in mind, focus on the goal, and rather than on the things that prevent you from achieving the goal. So your thinking, as a result, drives your planning and helps you therefore achieve your goals. So align your thoughts, if you can think about it like this, to calibrate your plans to achieve what you are aiming at. And then lastly, adopt this habit that says you can accelerate around the corners. Now, for those of you that are more spiritual and are Christian, will appreciate this. Proverbs 3 verse 6 says, in all your ways submit to him. In this case, whose him is God, and he will make your paths straight. So you looking beyond the barrier, you're looking beyond the obstacle in your path, and you're focusing on him and presenting your plans to him, and all the challenges, all the bends in your road will be straightened. And literally, this is the one rule that I absolutely like. I experiment like this, is I look beyond the bend, and once my body has aligned, my hands, my shoulders, and everything is steering towards the outcome beyond the bend, I can then look around without changing my body position. And that is a deliberately and consciously look beyond the bend. So that is really around taking corners. Now, the other thing that you need to learn where the rules are concerned is that you will take the time before you get on the bike to put on your safety clothing, your gloves, your helmet, and everybody gets in their cars and drive away while you're still in the car park, putting on your paraphernalia. However, Within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you catch up to the first robot and then you're gone. And you've gained a half an hour on, on your colleague, your friends, associates, whatever, on the motorist around you. So don't feel as if you need to rush. Pause, take the time, put on what's required, and then take off. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about bike control. Just touch on it. And some of you bike riders, that's fine. For some of you who don't ride bikes and who are still terrified, of even the thought of it, this is what's different. Is you got to do a lot of different things with your hands and your feet. For example, in a motor vehicle, you've got a steering wheel, you learn where the indicators are, and if you're driving an automatic, you just know where the handbrake is, and that's about it. Everything is done for you. Or if you're driving a manual car, your left hand changes gears, etc., and your right foot presses the accelerator and the brake, and your left, the clutch. And that's all in the feet. But now, with a motorbike, you have the accelerator and the clutch, on the handles, and the accelerator is something that you tweak with your right hand. The clutch is with your left hand. The front brakes is with your right hand, and the gears are changed with your left foot, and the back brakes done with your right foot. And as I'm saying this, I know that some wise cracker will tell me, but you have automatic motorbikes as well. Of course you do, right? So I'm not talking about a bike that's automatic. I'm talking about something that's manual. And for the real bikers out there, joking. But the key with all of this is I had to learn to internalize these controls. It didn't come naturally. As a driver, as a motor car driver, of course, what comes naturally and what's been internalized was the way you drive the car and you change gears and you do all of that and you look around and you stay vigilant and you don't think about it. It kind of drops into your unconscious. You go into a bit of an autopilot mode. But when I started out with the motorbike, it was not internal. I had to think it through. But I suddenly realized that I can't think about, okay, which hand has to do which hand when I had to react in the moment. So here's the thing. I had to practice and rehearse to internalize all this. And literally, while I was not even sitting on the motorbike, I would think about the different things that I had to do. And sitting on a chair, people looked at me like I was crazy, sitting and just imagining, okay, my right hand does this, there's the throttle with my right hand, and then I have to change gears, and then my foot has to do this, and so constantly thinking about this. And in order to accelerate that internalization process. And in this case, on a motorbike, as far as these things are concerned, is familiarity brings content. With the time available, it's quite amazing. I'm just going to stick on the learning curve, because the last topic I'm going to talk about as far as the learning curve is concerned, and within the environment that I had to learn. It's funny, I knew this environment from a motorist point of view, but I did not know this environment from a biker's point of view. So here's what I had to learn, was to have empathy for the motorist, is to put myself in the motorist seat behind the steering wheel of an individual motorist. Not as Jacques as a driver, but rather as that person that I'm encountering on the road. And so here's the first thing that we all have to acknowledge, and we have these things anyway in whatever we do, is this question around blind spots. You got to think that the motorist does not see you. You don't make the assumption that he does, or he or she does. You make the assumption that you are in the motorist blind spot at all times. So you got to pay attention to all kinds of different things. And anticipate what the motorist is likely to do. So, firstly, let's talk about changing lanes. Now, we all know as motorists that we use indicators to signal the intent to an action. Now, that's how We're supposed to use indicators, but that's not how I would say the average motorist actually uses an indicator. That indicator is switched on when the action is being taken. For example, I make the point is that as a motorist, you are meaning to change lanes, so you put on your indicator and you wait for the best moment and you then change lanes, right? It's signaling your intention. But what tends to happen is that the motorist sees the gap to change the lane, indicates and changes lanes. And what's the difference, you would ask? I say, well, with the motorist who's actually signaling an intent, it gives you enough warning as a biker and enough prep time to allow for that moment when the motorist changes lanes, right? And you stay safe. However, when the motorist indicates and takes action at the same time, very little warning and therefore no prep time, so you got to stay vigilant. So you got to use everything else that will help you when it comes to motorist taking action, right? And it's the same thing as communication. Generally with people, they say, well, 80 to 90% or 10% of what we communicate is that we use our words, and the rest is all sort of body language, right? We're going to learn how to read body language, and I want to tell you that you need to read. It's the same thing where motorists are concerned, is that you got to read what the vehicle is intending to do. And I'll give you some examples around this. Is basically when the car is driving centrally within the lane, the likelihood that they're going to change lanes, right, is a lot less. So you can ride with confidence while you're doing your lane splitting or overtaking. When the motor vehicle, when the car is veering so close to either one of the lines, right? Then you know that on the motorist's mind is their intention to switch lanes as soon as they possibly can, right? So you read that, and so you can anticipate it. When you see this, especially also even if it's in heavy traffic, the motorist actually drives in a jerking fashion with fast starts and stops, and then you know that particular motorist is in a grave hurry, and the person's mind is on the destination and is not present where they're at in the traffic, and therefore not paying attention to what's happening around them. They're concerned that they're not getting to their destination fast enough. And so what that means is when gaps are opening in a faster moving lane, that this particular person would take that gap, and sometimes without even indicating. So you prepare yourself mentally by anticipating what the motorist is going to be doing. And one of my favorites is when the accident is happening on the other side of the freeway, and the motorists slow down on the one side that is supposed to be free flowing, and sometimes people quite dramatically brake. So if you're traveling behind a free flowing traffic, motorists are rubbernecking and they're looking on the other lane or the other side of the freeway. Be vigilant. All right, so this is about vigilant, but about reading what's going on and not just depending on the acceptable behavior that you would expect from motorists. And then, it is the other one is ensuring maximum visibility. The question in your mind, does the motorist see? And I just said, well, I assume that the motorist is not seeing you. There's little visibility. So turning on the head and having the headlamp on during the day is not as great as at night. So literally, it's the type of clothing that you wear during the day. And black clothing does not work. Dark clothing does not work. So you wear bright clothing, fluorescent yellow and a lime. So that penetrates, punctures the motorist consciousness, those colors. And even putting reflecting tape, once again during the day, not as dramatic as at night, but literally it's all about the splash of color. It's drawing the attention to yourself as best as possible. And you know what? To be heard and to be seen, basically, generally, this is what you need to do. And it's sometimes in your presentation, sometimes in being assertive and confident, owning your lane, being quite comfortable in your own skin, that ensures maximum visibility. And then lastly, be aware that other bikers affect and influence the behavior of the motorist as well. So if there are multi-lanes and numerous bikers are lane splitting, some people get such a shock when they realize there's a biker on their side that they swerve violently and sharply, and this can put you in harm's way. So just be aware of there. Many of you, be extra vigilant. And also sometimes there are some aggressive bikers who smash the side view mirrors of the motorist because they've assumed that the motorist has seen them. Why? They have not. And can you blame them? So even though I spoke about the think bike sentiment that's on the back of the bumpers, is remember that it's not top of mind to motorists. They haven't seen you. It's in their blind spot. So I'm going to end it today on just the learning curve, and I will continue around the experience curve and maybe chapter 4 next time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacques. There were so many metaphors that one can use. I mean, from the start of like the unwritten rules you actually get in families that we need to work with, to like changing the lanes and or minding the gap in a sense and looking at those things. So there was quite a lot that one can actually take, and I loved what you said at the end about that confidence of staying in your lane, and then even with your presentation, to be confident in who you are in your own skin, and that needs to kind of come through in presentation and the visibility. Excellent, I loved it.
You're so
So thank
kind.
you. Thank you.
Well,
I will look forward to the next part.
thank you, Shanaaz.
Yeah.
And yeah, see
I'll
you
go think
next
about
week.
next week. Yes, I'll go think
Ye-
about what I can and focus on next week.
you
Thanks.
always it's we look forward to it because when we unwrap it, it's so rich. It's so rich. And but thank you for your support and listening. Thank you, Julia, for as usual
Thank
being
you.
faithful and making sure that the message gets out there. And until next week, have a fantastic evening and a wonderful week.